Hello, dear friends. We are sincerely glad to welcome you again. And today we will talk with the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Greetings.
Igor Mikhailovich, in the previous video, we discussed that in every person there are both an angel and a demon. And of course, one should never forget about this, because as soon as a demon begins to dominate a human as personality, laziness and the desire for power appear on the spiritual path. But sometimes a scenario may even be worse when there is a substitution of reality, and when the devil appears to a person in the image of the angels of light, or conversely, makes a person think that he has already achieved something himself, that he has achieved some kind of angelic rank in the hierarchy. And of course, the following questions arose. Does this mean that such people never had a spiritual goal, but only worldly interests, that they were not looking for God's love, but strove only for magic and power?
No, of course not. Often people have a noble goal, and this goal is spiritual salvation. It's just that we should not forget that the devil is very strong. As long as we live our simple, ordinary human life, we don't notice that. We don't know it. We live being so engrossed in the material world. We have so many problems that we don't even have time to look in a mirror, let alone the soul, as they say. Therefore, we do not see the devil, we do not see who manipulates us, and we do not actually see whether we live or not. It's enough for an ordinary person to think a little bit, and the world becomes kind of like surrealism. It's not some kind of an altered reality. It just turns into a sort of nightmare. If a person stops at least a little bit in our common, everyday running and takes at least a slight look at himself in his life, when can he think about God if even moments of peace frighten him? When he begins to analyze, why is he here at all? And who is he? Meanwhile, many people often start pondering, what is the meaning of human life? A simple question. To be born, so to say, to fulfill a standard program, to plant trees, to give birth to children, to build houses, and that's it. And what for? There's sort of an excuse. Well, everyone lives like that, both animals and humans. What is the difference between them? The difference, friends, is that there is a soul in a human being. And since there is a soul, a representative of the spiritual world, then there must be a demon, a representative of Satan's world. And we often do not see this very representative. We don't even have an idea of where he is or who he is. It is easy to judge people who think they are something or someone and things like this, or who supposedly have lost their way. But has a person lost his way, or is this his way? This is also a serious question. For example, a person aspired to the spiritual world, but he fell into temptation. Somewhere, Satan gave him a little, or a lot of power over people. A person who had already tasted that cake, he couldn't tear himself away from it, like a calf from its mother. He became completely engrossed in that. However, in the beginning, he even did his best, or followed the spiritual path, and he felt that it was his path. But then he fell into an illusion. He was surrounded by the same kind of people who had the same problems as he. They were full of worries, so to say, and the like. In addition, priests told him, "Help us with yet another temple, and you'll be rewarded. You're already in heaven anyway. Look how much you're doing." Isn't that how people behave in this world? It is. And the person forgot himself. He was distracted. But don't be too quick to judge him, because he may come back. Maybe that's what he needs. And it's not that the devil defeated him, but rather, God permitted that. It's the same about the fact that some people begin to think of themselves as angels, that they are already saints, that they have achieved something in this world. But that's another test. And there is also no need to judge them. It may be like another springboard for a person in his life. He seems to have fallen, but he can also rise. Right? Why jump to conclusions? Everything will become clear in the end. And, I'll also say this. We go through life with steady steps, each in their own direction. Some aspire to what is spiritual, others to what is mundane. It doesn't matter. Just like in the mundane, people fall, rise, and overtake others. So in the spiritual, even those who have fallen can rise and overtake you. Therefore, the spiritual path is an individual path. Everything and everyone you should watch, my friend, is yourself. As for the rest of people have the right to live according to their choice. They are free people. God Himself gave them this very freedom, the right to choose how to deal with their life, to make mistakes, to fall, to rise. It is their right. But our consciousness always tries to judge someone.
Igor Mikhailovich, guys have also observed that sometimes a lot of attention is invested in the image of the final goal. And we actually received a lot of questions like, what will happen later when a person becomes an angel? And what will be beyond the lotus of the utmost boundary? And what will happen when I reach the 33rd level or the 33rd dimension? What does it all lead to?
It leads to joining Freemasonry, at the very least. It is they who have the 33rd level, kind of the 90th degree or something else, right? On the spiritual path, there's no tape measure, no measurements, nothing. That's why there are no levels. There's a path, and this path is eternal. And what is so remarkable about the spiritual path, in my opinion, is that if a person has embarked on it, it is forever, for eternity. I mean, no matter how much a person develops, no matter how much he strives for perfection, and the ultimate goal in this case is spiritual perfection, it's impossible to achieve it. That's why this path is beautiful, because a person can develop forever. Is it bad?
Eternal development.
It's not that he can. He must develop all the time. But if a person stops, if he doesn't strive for development, those are the demon's tricks in this case. If there is no desire inside to grow every day and take a new step, then this person is already rolling down the mountain and not going up. There is such a good example. It's a little bit associative, but it gives a clear understanding about our life, especially about the spiritual path. Imagine that every human being is born somewhere in the middle of a mountain. And then, throughout their lives, some people go uphill. Because the kingdom of heaven is exactly at the mountain peak, while others go downhill, where there is hell. That is how the world is divided. It's easy to walk down. One can even roll down, but as for ascending, one has to climb. Every step has to be calibrated. Every movement has to be monitored so as not to fall and not to roll down. Sometimes we fall when we stumble and get distracted. And sometimes we even roll down. But if our goal is to traverse this mountain, we will definitely make it. However, on our way up to the spiritual world, there always arise problems. Sometimes people above you fall down, hitting you and dragging you down with them, while sometimes a whole avalanche of people falls down. And it's not funny. It's real. Let's look at a simple example. Let's step away from this association and consider our ordinary lives. A crisis occurs. Anything, from a revolution to a financial collapse. It involves a mass of people. The entire information field explodes. Everyone around is, preoccupied only with this. I would compare it to a rockfall coming down a mountain, when a huge flow, like an avalanche, is rushing at you. After all, these people were also striving for heights, but they were distracted by the news and the media, those very events that are taking place. And as soon as they were distracted, started to think about earthly things, and lost their goal, they were immediately seized by the demon. And what does the demon do? It throws people from the heights down into hell, and so they roll. And in this information flow, when everyone disturbs you and says, "What is your opinion? What do you think about this? What do you think about that?" and so on, a person, willing or not, begins to think and worry about it. Why? Because the imp inside activates and says, "You are going uphill now. This is wonderful. This is good. But what are you going to eat tomorrow?" A simple, trivial question. Even though you know the answer to it, you still ponder. Indeed, in such a situation, how am I going to live tomorrow? As soon as you have pondered over the earthly things more than necessary and shifted all your vril, all your attention to an ordinary earthly problem, it has become your goal, and you no longer notice that you are falling down. You see how simple everything is. That is why one who is going uphill has to be more vigilant and more careful. Even if a flow of people is falling on you like an avalanche, you have to go around it all and withstand the blow. That's the only way. You have to fight for life. Life is not given just like that, friends. The first life is given to us not by our choice and not by our will. Excuse me, it's a matter of chance. But since we are here, it means we have a chance. It means we are not the worst. We have surpassed millions, and we have great prospects ahead of us. We deserve to climb up this mountain. A question remains, why aren't we climbing up? And the answer is simple, because the devil is strong. That's the point. Sometimes he leads us astray. He leads us into selfishness. That is his function, and this must be clearly understood. It is his job to prevent those who are unworthy of it from ascending. Just that, nothing more. You see how simple everything is.
Yes, Igor Mikhailovich, these are very important insights right now. You know, consciousness draws for many people that they're already holy, that they're already glowing with the brightest light on their spiritual path, but...
Such people can be envied, right?
But you know, very many, a prevailing majority of people actually write about the phenomenon which occurs with them at the beginning of the spiritual path. As soon as they begin to study consciousness, as soon as they start working on themselves, they realize that they have even become somehow worse. Before the spiritual path, they somehow position themselves as positive, good people.
Before the spiritual path, their entire glade was well trimmed and it was
and
beautiful.
then a person has suddenly become so bad and filthy. There are a lot of weeds. A whole life is not enough to pluck them all out.
Quite right.
What is this phenomenon? Why do sins, let's say, become more and more numerous when a person...
This is not a phenomenon. This is a natural course of events, and everyone goes through this. I'll explain it very simply, friends. As long as we live in our three-dimensional world, as long as we are concerned with our health, our stomach, and how to tease our neighbor with new clothes or a new car, everything is sort of simple for us. Everything is clear and easy. We are normal, good people. Sometimes we go to our temples, and sometimes we just recall God. At least, that's already a lot, right? I mean, we are all spiritual people, and everything is fine with us. But as soon as a person embarks on the spiritual path, serious metamorphoses take place at this stage. The person begins to get rid of those weeds inside him, of that power of Satan, of those strings which Satan pulls to move our body and our tongue, to play our emotions like strings. And this is where we realize to what extent we are mired in slavery, and how much work we should do to make our glade really clean, because it is entirely covered with weeds. This is actually a result of the spiritual path. And this is wonderful. Why? Because only when you get rid of Satan can you enter heaven. And to become free, you must study the enemy in order to defeat him, right? That is exactly why such phenomena arise. Because a person works on himself. He strives for the spiritual world, and his goal is life. He doesn't want to be, excuse me, a dead man. He doesn't want to be a subpersonality. He wants to be alive. He wants to be a worthy one among the worthy. And that is the noblest desire and aspiration. However, he faces many problems in himself. This is also a good thing. Why? Because there is something to work on, and each plucked weed strengthens the person on his spiritual path, and it gives him an understanding of how twisted the world really is. That this world doesn't have the purity which should be there. Why? Because all our weeds are the result of our common life, the life of all humanity. Because there are too many lies, deception, substitutions, and a lot of other various manipulative technologies embedded into our lives thousands of years ago by various priests who drove us away from God. You know, like a carrot for a donkey. You seem to feel God, and you seem to be going towards Him, but you see that you are being dragged into a swamp deeper and deeper. And this is not a paradox, this is reality. But when you start going uphill instead of rolling downhill, you realize how many problems there are. And this is not sinfulness, no. This is purification. This is exactly catharsis. True catharsis when a person is getting rid of it all. You shouldn't be afraid or ashamed of that, and you shouldn't judge anyone. Even if a person has an idea of himself that he's a saint, a bodhisattva, or an angel, that's his problem. Yes, he has been tempted a little bit now because Satan has shown him the wrong thing. Or the person wanted something he desired to come true. Such a thing happens, and it can happen to anyone. However, you shouldn't rub a person's nose into that and shouldn't judge him, because I'll put it simply, judgment is not just a weed, it's entire trees. Why? Because you pay your attention to another person's life, to the life of a free human who can make mistakes as he wants. He has the right to do so. Why? Because he is a human being. Because he is the one who chooses how to live. And again, you are actually looking at this particular moment while the person, even if he fell into his own selfishness and into an illusion which Satan could form for him, well, he could form such self-conceit in that person. But at any moment, the person can understand that this was merely Satan's trick, and that can serve as a wonderful lesson for him. He can take the next step uphill, and having gained strength and grasped the essence of how Satan works, he can overtake all of us. Everything depends on God's will and a person's aspiration. So you shouldn't rush to judge anyone. It is better to put things in order in yourself, and you shouldn't be sad that you lived happily. You lived freely and considered yourself almost a spiritually free person. But as soon as you embarked on the spiritual path, you noticed a lot of weeds and filth in yourself. I'll tell you the following. Recall the best of people, the Prophet Muhammad himself, who said that even he had to ask forgiveness from Allah 100 times a day for his sins. Why? After all, he is the best of people. It's all because we live in this world, in an embrace with an imp, and sometimes we listen to that imp. And it's impossible not to listen to it, because thanks to it we perceive this world, and thanks to it we learn here. Therefore, even hating an imp is a sin. We should respect any teacher, and we should learn from everyone, from this demon as well. Just like from the one who called himself an angel, as well as from the one who fell and is rolling down. You should especially learn from the one who fell and is rolling down, not in the sense of learning to fall, but in the sense of how to avoid such a situation. When you learn from mistakes of other people, you become wiser, because you do not make such mistakes, because you study how this imp works in yourself. First and foremost, how it distracts your attention, how it makes you shift your attention from your goal at the peak of the mountain to its foot, since you actually look at the one who is rolling while he is rolling down, so your gaze is directed downwards. You won't notice how you yourself will rush there if you judge someone. The spiritual path is freedom. It is not judgment. And the higher you ascend, my friend, the less oxygen you will have, and the harder it will be for you to walk. The devil is strong, but the higher. You'll be in heaven until you learn to fly. As for true spiritual freedom, yes, it gives wings. It inspires, like in advertising, but for real. Therefore, all this is good. Although sometimes it is sad. Yes, sometimes you feel sorry for the friends who fall, and sometimes you cannot even offer your hand because it's a person's choice, and your outstretched hand only makes him angry. So he pushes it away. However, this is his choice, and you should respect that choice as well. And it is worth learning from such a person. Why? If he was hooked on a thought, a deed, or a hobby, and simply rolled down, this means you should remember that case and never get into these kinds of situations. Look what kind of a guard and teacher we have next to us. We should learn from everyone, from angels, from demons, and even from Satan himself. There's really a lot to learn from him, believe me, not in the sense of magic, but in the sense of gaining life. He has seen many people, both those who ascended the mountain and those who almost rolled to the bottom and then quickly ran uphill. He has seen all sorts of things. He has even seen those who nearly approached the peak and then jumped into his arms. Satan has seen such people as well. This is life. And the main thing here is a person's choice. That's what is important.
There are also a lot of insights that one should be attentive every day and work every day. Thanks exactly to such inner work on oneself and thanks to the cultivation of love, this very steady rise takes place. One should rely on the firm support of love and not on the shaky supports of the material world.
Only on love. Any emotion that is in us except love, and even love, when it's like an emotion, can also do harm. You should remember that. This doesn't mean that you cannot be emotional. A human is a living being. And anyone, even the prophet himself, was emotional. This is normal. The only point is to keep everything under control and not to let the demon manipulate you. Even on those very emotions, even on the emotions of joy. This doesn't mean that you should restrain emotions, but you just need to understand where they lead you. If they don't prevent you from going up, then it is certainly better to go up with a good emotion, right? Although, you cannot go up with sadness. Sadness is the heaviest burden that really pulls you down. Generally speaking, you should get rid of sins, while sins are exactly those weeds of ours. So let's roll up our sleeves, friends, and make our front garden beautiful and clean. Let good, fragrant flowers grow there.
So that this beautiful front garden is fragrant with God's true grace.
Well, again, everything depends on a person. Everything is in our hands. So, my friends, let us simply love each other, because only through love can we gain life eternal. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Igor Mikhailovich.
Thank you, friends. Thank you for everything. Thank you for being here. Thank you for not forgetting us. Thank you for helping those who need it now. Thank you for supporting those who fall. And thank you for not falling yourselves. Peace be with you.